Hey, thanks for checking out this week's video. So as you may have guessed from the title, this week I'm going to talk a bit about inspiration and how I find it and how I overcome artist block and all those kind of things. But first I'm just going to say a little bit about the piece that I'm working on. Again, you'll notice I'm starting off with graphite and then I'm going to go over the top with gouache like I always do. It's my usual thing at the moment, isn't it? But it's how I really enjoy painting, and I feel like I pushed myself a bit further this time, and I'm really happy with the outcome actually, so hopefully you like it. So I'm going to dive into what I think is probably the biggest and most important question when it comes to inspiration. Do you need inspiration to make art? Because I think it's a big misconception that you have to be inspired, you have to be in the moment to be able to create anything, and I think it's one of the most destructive opinions to have for yourself as an artist. I mean, sure, it helps and it certainly gets you excited to be working, but it certainly isn't needed. In fact, I think the more that you focus on inspiration, the harder it actually becomes to find and to work without it. It's one of the worst things you can do as an artist, is to heavily rely on inspiration to a point where you just can't work without it. So what do you do if you can't find inspiration or you're not in the mood? Well, the quickest answer is just to get on with it anyway. And yes, I know how that sounds, much easier said than done. And there are a few things that I found that do help. And a lot of this is just a result of trial and error, so it may not work for you, it may work for you. At the very least, it's a starting point. So I think there are some different times when we would all like to feel inspired. And one of them is when coming up with ideas in the beginning. Another is when starting a new piece. So maybe you've got an idea, but you're just staring at a blank piece of paper and you just don't know how to get started. And another one is when you get stuck. Either you're partway through or you're at that ugly stage and you just don't feel like you can get past it, or you're nearing the end and you've just got so many little pieces to do here and there. It just feels like you can't see the end. So when it comes to coming up with the ideas in the first place, I always like to start with my interests, because naturally anything that you're interested in has the potential to spark something because you've already got a connection to it. And interests can be anything from the obvious, like music and movies, TV, other artists, books, or just even general genres such as fantasy or sci-fi. And then there's the more overlooked, simple things, such as a quote that you saw on your Facebook feed or something, or a particular place you visited, a feeling, a moment. It sounds dead cheesy, I know, but just start paying attention to yourself, and whenever something makes you feel anything, just make note of what it is. When you strongly relate to something, make a note of what it is. When you see something so beautiful it makes you stop to look, just make a note of what it is. Now these things that you're taking a note of, you can either literally write them down or do some searching online and just save pictures to remind you of them. Start an inspiration folder and fill it. If you feel stuck, then you can come back to it and look through your folder. You still not got an idea, then just search your interests again. I find Pinterest is a great resource for this. And those that aren't familiar with Pinterest, I'll put a link in the description box below, but go check it out. Essentially all it is a place where people save links to things that they like, and then there is a search bar and you can search through other people's interests. It is a great resource and I definitely recommend it when you're stuck looking for things. Failing this, then do some studies. We all have areas that we need to work on, or maybe try some art challenges. Do something that doesn't require you to think, and then quite often you'll find some ideas will come to you. Okay, so the other area that I mentioned that would be nice to feel inspired is when you're starting a new piece. So perhaps you've already got an idea, you're about to start and you have your blank piece of paper or canvas and you just don't know where to start. So there are 3 approaches I usually take to this, and I will list them in what I deem the best, the worst, and this will make sense, just bear with me. So the first one is you can start doodling thumbnails, and this is ideal because the idea has come from you, like the visual aspect of everything has come straight from your head, there's no outside influences. I personally find this the hardest and often don't do it. For me, this is difficult because I usually have like a visual in my head, and when I try and thumbnail it without using anything else, it just comes out as complete mush. It's like I've completely forgotten how to draw, everything's gone out the window, and I'm pretty sure my 4-year-old son could have done something better. So I'm working on this one because ideally I would prefer this method, but right now it often doesn't work for me. But maybe it'll work for you, so give it a go. So the second approach is finding references, and this is my preferred approach. I've already got my idea, so then I look for references that fit it, basically, but make sure that you're using photos that are stock and not just Googling any random photo. Then I layer my elements together, usually by manipulating them in Photoshop, and I'll create my lines from that. And for anyone who would like to do this but doesn't quite know how to, I've completely recorded and uploaded a video that shows my entire process of mashing things together. And there's also a free PDF download that goes into a bit more detail, so I'll put that as a pop-up card for anyone interested. And the last approach is looking at other artists. Now this should really be a last option because you have to be very careful not to outright copy. Even just taking one little element like the way someone draws an eye from somebody else's work is plagiarism, and I'm definitely not for it. If you just want to do sketches and studies and things like that to learn, by all means go for it. I mean, it is a great way to learn. There's a reason why at universities and colleges and things that they teach you to study old masters, because you can learn so much from dissecting somebody else's work and style. So that's great, do it, but don't share it. Sharing is where the problem is. If you have done a study of somebody else's work and you want to share it, get permission from the artist first. Even if you're not making any money by sharing it, it is still classed as commercial use, because you sharing it gets you traffic to your website or your Instagram and then helps you grow, and in turn does generate money. So it's indirectly helping you, and basically it is classed as commercial use, and that is where lawsuits and all that nasty stuff comes into it. Plus it's just essentially riding off the back of somebody else's work, and you don't want to be the artist who builds a career off that. So what I actually mean by looking at other artists to help you get started on a piece is to use them as inspiration. So if you've got an inspiration folder already made, have a look through it, or if you don't yet, then browse the internet and find your favorite artists, or maybe discover some new ones. Find your artist that you like and take a look through the pictures and make a mental note of the things that you like. You basically want to fill your head with all these cool new ideas and cool new things that you've seen other people doing, and then you want to close the image and just don't look at it again. Don't go back to it, don't revisit it, just close it and come back to that mental note in your mind. Then you want to start sketching. So you don't go straight to your canvas, you don't want to go straight to your final thing, because you will be too heavily influenced by the artist and it may end up being plagiarism without it really meaning to be plagiarism, if that makes sense. So if you do sketching and thumbnailing, you can get all of that out of the way, and eventually you will be left with what you have taken inspiration wise from those artists and your own ideas, and it should merge into something that's a bit more you. I'm hoping this makes sense. It's a very tricky one, and if it makes you feel uncomfortable, then by all means do not do it. You really do have to be careful with this one, but it's something I'll put out there because it's kind of like, it's my last resort for me personally. If I'm really stuck, this is what I go for, and it can stop artist block before it even happens, and for that it's worth it. You just need to know where to draw the line and where to be careful. So now we're at the last scenario in which inspiration is helpful to have, and that is when you're stuck. Now it depends why it is that you are stuck. Is it because you don't know how to approach the next part of your painting? So for example, you're painting a different topic for the first time and you've got no practice in it. Or maybe you're about to start colouring and you just can't decide what colour scheme to go for. So there's a few simple solutions to that. If you want to practice something first, then practice something first. Get a new piece of paper and try it out. If it's something like the colours, or you're already part way and you don't want to ruin what you've already got, you can take a picture of it and bring it into something like Photoshop and make those color adjustments, add more color or add new elements, any of those things. In fact, I think I've done all of those things before, and it's been really helpful because then I haven't felt as scared to go forward knowing that it has potential to be okay. Or maybe you're stuck at that ugly stage where everything's sort of loosely blocked in and just currently resembles poo. You know what stage I'm on about, right? Or maybe you're just sick of looking at it after investing so much time into it, or maybe there's still so many bits you can see, this needs work, that does too, or no, there's a bit of it, that overwhelming feeling that you've come so far but there's still so far to go. That's perhaps the hardest part, at least for me it is. And the only way forward in this case I found is just to do it, just to get on with it. There's no amount of looking through your inspiration folder or scrolling your Instagram feed or watching tutorials that is going to help you get through this. Sadly, it's all on us at this stage. You can either try things like putting on your favourite music or TV or movie or something, preferably ones that you've seen before so you're less tempted to be glued to it, but if it does distract you, then turn it off, work in silence. I know it sounds boring, but if you just pick one area to work on and don't look at all of the things left to do, just focus on it and keep moving forward. Sounds like rubbish advice, but honestly it's the only thing I've found that works, and I just remind myself that if I'm not working on this artwork, I will have most likely spent my time doing nothing, which gets me no results and nothing to show for it. So if you look at it as if even doing 30 minutes of work will have meant that you haven't wasted your time, you have done something, you have made progress, and at the end of the day, progress is progress. Often I find forcing myself to do small time limits like this will mean that I can get to a point where I'm like, well, I'm so close to finishing this part, I might as well keep going, or I could just quickly do this bit while I'm here as well. And the amount of times that I've just made myself go a little bit further and a little bit further, and then I'll look at the clock and hours have flown in and I have made so much more progress. And originally that was just going to be a wasted night, but because I forced myself to get on with it, it's been really productive, and then it's really difficult to tear myself away from. So ultimately, you do not need inspiration. You do not need to be in the mood to create art. You need to know that your time is valuable, and to waste it waiting for something out of your control to happen will just slow your progress down drastically, maybe even bring it to a standstill. So take control and teach yourself that it can be done on your terms. Now, I'm not saying that it's easy, because it really isn't, and I still struggle with it, but I have noticed a huge difference in my productivity. In fact, since taking this sort of attitude and this approach and using these tips that I've been talking about today, I cannot remember the last time I had an art block. I cannot remember the last time I couldn't come up with an idea. Sure, they're not instant or anything, but I always get there. I cannot remember the last time I struggled in that sense. The struggle that I get nowadays is trying to push myself further. Trying to push myself more as an artist, and perhaps the worst of it is being too tired to draw, trying to push through exhaustion. That one's a really hard one for me. So I hope these tips have been helpful to somebody. Anybody? Maybe not, but either way it's a talking point, isn't it? So if you've got any tips, tricks, anything that you have found helps, or in contrast, something that you found really unhelpful and maybe even made things worse, do share. Share and share alike. Let's help each other out, because art block is one of the worst feelings in the world. Feeling uninspired and unable to do anything. It's horrible, and I feel like it can spiral quite quickly, and nobody wants that. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. If you did, then please give it a like. If you want to see more, then do subscribe. As always, I will link all of the materials used down in the description below, and I've even started an Amazon affiliate, so if you use the links to the products that I used in this video, then I get a little cut. I don't actually know how it works, but I thought it might be a good idea. At the very least, you've got links to the exact thing that I use. So thanks again for watching, especially if you were able to stick it out this far. Until next time, bye!